Yeah, I think that's a great setup because almost more important than the quarter is what they're seeing in terms of from the AI strategy monetization. Look, based on all of our work, we could be looking at 4 to 5 billion incremental of AI revenue for Salesforce going to next year. I think it starts this quarter. Our checks have actually been very strong in terms of customers existing on Agentforce and just what we see in terms of overall deal activity. I'd actually say AI was almost a headwind for Benioff and Salesforce if you go back to last year. Now it's a tailwind. We're bullish. This could be a $425 stock.
Wait, just off agents or is there something else?
Well, I think that continues to really be just this first part of the broader AI strategy. That's because you're gonna have AI for MuleSoft, AI for Tableau, AI for core CRM. It speaks to almost going back to the Palantir strategy. This is the software age for AI. It starts in 25. Benioff's going to be in, I'd say, seat 3A when it comes to this AI plane taking off.
Dan Ives discusses Palantir's strong performance, arguing it could reach triple-digit stock prices due to AI growth, despite concerns about its high price. He also highlights Salesforce's upcoming earnings and the potential for its AI-driven growth, predicting an additional $4 to $5 billion in AI revenue next year. Ives views AI as a tailwind for Salesforce and sees the company as a leader in the space. Lastly, Ives addresses U.S. export controls on semiconductor companies, noting that while some companies may be impacted, the effect is not significant, and he believes it won't drastically change the semiconductor industry's outlook.
We got to start with last month's action. Palantir, the best performing stock in the S&P 500. You put research out on it. This is a layup for you. Would you buy at these levels? This stock is up over 275% year to date.
Oh, I mean, we're buyers. It continues to be one of our top picks. And the reason I think this could be a triple-digit stock is where AI is heading. Look, Frank, as the use cases ramp and software phase ramp, it will be led by Karp and Palantir. And that's why I just disagree with the argument, it's expensive. This is $1 billion of free cash flow that could be $4 or $5 billion free cash flow. You could be a $125 stock. That's why we're bullish despite haters continuing to hate.
All right, like I said, it was a layup. Your price target $75. You're like double the street right now. Also, I know you're a big fan of Dr. Karp and the whole team over there. All right, I want to switch gears. Looking ahead to Salesforce reports earnings after the bell tomorrow. Most analysts are expecting a strong quarter, but I think the question is AI agents and Agentforce. I know you have channel checks. I know you tapped into Dreamforce. What's your take on the quarter and also the growth driver of agents?
I mean, I think we just have to get ready and just get used to this kind of thing, right? Because last week, the U.S. barred semiconductor companies from selling any chips to China. And that's one of the reasons why Applied Materials fell pretty substantially, Lam Research. Those companies have almost 30% of their revenues to Chinese companies. So you can see why they fell. 12% is probably manageable, Becky, but I just think we're going to have to get used to this. It's back and forth, and that's one of the reasons why I think the semiconductors have actually paused, right? I mean, Nvidia and Broadcom have been the stellars. They've been the standouts. And I think they will be the long-term winners for years and years to come. But I do think that they've had a nice run, and overall the semiconductors over the last couple of years have had a nice run. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see just some volatility, and maybe they pause for a bit. That's one of the reasons why software has done so well, because you're seeing money come out of semis and go into software.
I guess that raises the question, though, of so many other companies that have big business or that are reliant on China for manufacturing, whether that be Apple or Starbucks or Nike. A lot of those companies are making moves to move their manufacturing or to try and expand their manufacturing reach from where they're getting these things. But it's not an overnight process. Do you sell those stocks as a result of what you're seeing this morning?
I don't think you sell those stocks, but I am glad to see over the last 4 years that these companies have actually been moving their businesses out of China and around the world. One of the reasons I like India so much is I think that they are an absolute beneficiary of this thing that's happening. And also, we've seen and we've been talking about reshoring and onshoring here in the United States. That is alive and well, and a very, very powerful theme, I think, Becky, for the next decade to come. We're going to spend $4 trillion on the energy transition wave, if you will, between now and 2050. And I think this is all part of that, trying to get supply chains here and so that companies can diversify and not be in the position that they were in when we saw COVID.
All right, Steph, let me ask you. Tesla may be a very unique company in this whole mix just because of Elon Musk's close ties to President Trump. Can he walk this line because China's not going to want to aggravate someone who is so close to incoming President Trump at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest question. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. Certainly, just by reaction of the stock price since the election, I think people believe that he can.
All right, so let me put you on the spot a bit. So we often talk about all the winners. I know you're always bullish on tech, in all fairness. When we're talking about agents, who's in the lead and who's trailing right now?
Look, I think who's trailing maybe some of the pure players. Like if you look at names like a Nice Systems, a Verint, I think SAP trailing a little. I think in terms of who's leading, it's Salesforce. Look, if you look broader in terms of AI, I think ServiceNow is a leader. I would argue to say right now, the pure players are leading, but this is a huge transition stage because you're going to have the clear winners that are defined next 6-9 months in terms of software. But I believe a clear winner will be Salesforce. The other one's Oracle.
Oracle and Salesforce. So Microsoft, Alphabet, everybody else, they're kind of in the middle of the pack.
On this area, I think they're behind. But also it speaks to our view, like as Khan ultimately is out at the FTC, given our view there, that's going to increase deal making. I think Microsoft's going to make an acquisition.
There we go. A little forecast right there, a prediction, if you will. I want to tell you about some news today. The Biden administration announcing new controls on chips and other chip making equipment when it comes to China. There are some carve outs for allies, countries like the Netherlands. I have ASML in mind right there. Your view on the export controls, let me keep it really bottom line for you, keep it simple. Who is going to possibly be hurt by it? If you look at the SMH ETF, very popular way to invest in chips, that was down on the news.
Yeah, look, you're going to have, this is not just here, you're going to have this continued play out game of high stakes poker, US and China. Look, I think Nvidia down a bit. I think that's overdone because I don't really see them impacting as much. There'll be carve-outs there. Intel, you look at how they could ultimately play here. ASML, that'll be a positive. TSMC would be viewed as maybe a negative along with like something like Micron. But Frank, I think as it all plays out, this is kind of more background noise. I don't view this as really changing things relative to they're selling into. It's actually not a dramatic change from what we've seen over the last, 3 to 6 months in Biden administration.
All right, so you're saying headlines, mostly background noise. Is there one stock in the chip space you just stay away from on these headlines? It's just bad business?
Look, I think the one maybe you're just a little leery of is probably Micron in terms of where this all plays out.
All right. Last question. I'm going to flip the script on you a little bit. BYD, Xiaomi, some other Chinese EV makers came out with their delivery numbers today. I know you've added EVs to your coverage. Smashing delivery estimates. At the same time, we're seeing the more traditional automakers like a Stellantis under some pressure as their CEO steps down. Just kind of your 2025 forecast. Look ahead to EVs. Do the traditional players, do they catch up? Do they stay in hybrids? What's going on with the Chinese players? Or have they possibly peaked in your mind? I mean, we've seen tremendous growth when it comes to these Chinese EV companies.
I think that's really the story, is that China EV growth, I think we've seen the worst days in the rearview mirror. I think in terms of BYD, NIO, of course, Tesla, I just had a record quarter from an EV perspective. That's going to be a huge narrative. I don't think that necessarily some of these tariff and other issues negatively impacted. And traditional players, Stellantis CEO out over the weekend, GM for the EV tax credits as a headwind. Look, this is going to be definitely a fork in the road situation for some of the Detroit Big Three. The core EV players, that continues to be the trade, not just Tesla, but also names like BYD.
BYD, Xiaomi, Li Auto, that's who you're talking about?
Exactly. I think those are really some of the core players when it comes to this China EV trade.
Joining us right now is Stephanie Link, Hightower Chief Investment Strategist and Portfolio Manager. And Stephanie, let's start with this news that we're hearing. Again, we've only heard this in the last 10 minutes or so, but there are headlines that China is investigating Nvidia over what they say is a suspected violation of anti-monopoly law. Nvidia shares right now down by about 2%. And I think our first question was, wait a second, do they even sell chips to China? Turns out they do. I think in the July quarter, they sold sold something like 12% of their revenue, $3.7 billion, accounted for sales in China. What do you think of this news?
Dan Ives highlights the transformative role of AI in driving growth for companies like Palantir and Salesforce, predicting substantial revenue and market expansion. Despite concerns about valuations and challenges, he remains optimistic about their potential. On semiconductors, Ives sees U.S. export controls as manageable, with key players like Nvidia poised for resilience and continued innovation. Do you believe AI will sustain the long-term growth of companies like Palantir and Salesforce? How might U.S. export controls shape the future of the semiconductor industry?